Excuse me. Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today, April 7th. As always, we'll be going through a recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they turn out, talking about weather spots if there are any on today's slate, which there will be one for today's game that we'll talk about real briefly. Going over my core picks on FanDuel, kind of breaking them down. I have one pitcher, four hitters. Looking about why I like them just in general, some pitcher versus hitter matchups, some recent history in there, and everything else like that. If you guys do have any questions at any point throughout this video, feel free to leave them down below. We'll also talk about the teams that I like to stack today overall for my top stacks from my cheat sheet, which is available on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as well. So definitely be sure to check it out on any of those platforms. Obviously, I will have it up on patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports as well. Have some extra additional MLB DFS notes as I do on the daily over there as well for a small monthly donation. But with that being said, going over a recap of yesterday's picks, obviously at the high end for pitcher, yesterday, I said it was pretty much between Lance Lynn and Kevin Gausman. Gausman ended up being the top pitcher. Lance Lynn, who was our core pick, unfortunately did not have the best day. $9,700, got to 4 points. He's a mess. He pitched 4 innings, gave up 8 runs on 5 strikeouts. So I played, just 2 standard lines yesterday. The line with Gausman did really well. The line with Lance Lynn, not so hot because obviously pitcher makes a big factor, especially when you're only playing one on a given slate. But with that being said, moving down to first base, we have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., $3,900, got 27.9 points, so he was a really good hit yesterday. Matt Chapman, his teammate, $3,400, got to 13 points. He was also a hit. And then we had Kiki Hernandez at $3,000, only got to 3.5, so did give him a push yesterday. Obviously, 0 for 4 with just the 1 RBI, so not the greatest day overall for him. Red Sox team did hit the ball pretty well, just he was unfortunately not one of those players, but at the same time, still not a goose egg overall. Victor Robles is our cheap paydown option yesterday at $2,600. Had some pretty good history versus Kyle Freeland in the past. Unfortunately, went 0 for 3 yesterday, so he was a miss with 0 points overall. So not the greatest day overall. If you play Kevin Gausman instead of Lance Lynn, you had some other decent plays. You still had a really good chance of cashing yesterday. But with that being said, going to move over to RotoWire, talk about some of this weather spot in play for today. So there is one game on the 6-game main slate that we will be looking at in terms of weather. That is going to be the Atlanta Braves and the San Diego Padres. So when I'm pulling it down here, let me get this pulled up as we're talking through it. So right now, 49% chance of rain down in Atlanta for this game. So there's a chance that this game gets delayed or even postponed. But based on what I've seen on different sources, sounds like it'll be scattered showers, so they'll still probably try to get this game in if possible. So just keep that in mind as we get move along throughout the day. Obviously, if there is more that changes throughout the day, we'll keep an eye out on that as well. Try to leave it down in the comments so you guys are best informed as possible. I do like some hitters from this game. Definitely a game that you could stack both teams, but we just have to pay attention to that weather as the day moves along. So now that we're off of that, we're going to go over to FanDuel, talk about the core picks for today overall. So once again, if you are joining me for the very first time, go over one pitcher, 4 hitters. Try to break up the hitter position so you're not getting too many outfielders. You're not getting like 2 first basemen for a first baseman utility. Kind of give you guys some flexibility as you're building out your own lineups as well. But what I do have for today, we have Zach Eflin at pitcher. He is $8,800. Had a pretty strong debut for the Tampa Bay Rays. Only went 5 innings, had 5 strikeouts though. Very good matchup today against the Oakland A's. He doesn't have a ton of history against these Oakland A's hitters. He pitched versus them last year. He got 21 FanDuel points in that game, but obviously Oakland's lineup is quite a bit different than it was last season even. So not as good as it was last year either too at that. So pretty much a AAA lineup at this point in time. Yeah, they had a couple of decent games here and there, but looks like a pretty good upside for him. Obviously, Tampa Bay pitcher, you always worry about how long they're going to let him go into the game. But as somebody who's been a starter and pretty stretched out in the past, don't have as many concerns with Zach Eflin just overall. If you don't want to go with him, if you want to try like a Patrick Sandoval route in that same type of price range, if you want to pay up, obviously we'd be looking at Clayton Kershaw or Brandon Woodruff at that point in time. But got a little bit more notes over on Patreon as well for that. So it looks like we got a comment here. So Danny said, do you give lineups? So personally, I don't give out lineups. For the most part, these platforms that do DFS, they don't like duping lineups too much as well. But so what I primarily do here on the channel is give out core picks that I like, the ones that stand out for the day, my top pitcher, my 4 hitters that I do like. Over on Patreon, got just notes just in general. I go through every single pitcher, whether they're in play for me, they're kind of a risky play, or there's somebody I'm avoiding, just based on the matchup, based on the history in the past as well. And then I go through the notable hitter matchups. So guys that have good history versus the pitcher they're facing today, go through some of the top stacks. Some of those end up in my cheat sheet. The cheat sheet's completely free. The Patreon, small monthly donation. And if you do it for every week, it's slightly over $1 per week, essentially. So just some additional information out there. Do not give out direct lineups, but, a lot of resources so you guys can go out and build your own lineups at the same time. But with that being said, going down to first base, obviously this is the game that we're watching for the weather, but we do have Matt Olson here. He is 4 for 9 in his career versus Nick Martinez, who is starting for the San Diego Padres with 2 home runs. So obviously a lot of upside there. Matt Olson's off to a pretty strong start. We'll go through this game log too, since there's only been so many games so far this season. So when we're looking at the recent history as well, with Matt Olson, you see he has a hit in, let's see, they played 7 games now. So he's had a hit in 5 out of 7 games. He's had a multi-hit game in 4 out of those 5 games as well. You see, he's been pretty consistent so far this season. He does have the 3 home runs. He's got that good history versus Nick Martinez. So there's not too much else we really need to say here. The biggest concern here is just whether this game actually ends up happening. But with scattered thunderstorms, if you want to play somebody else in the spot, you could definitely do that. But some upside with Matt Olson overall. Some of these Braves hitters do have a really good history versus Nick Martinez as well. Then we move down to third base, kind of the pay down option. I always like to throw a couple pay down guys today. Gio Urshela is here. You can play him at shortstop. You can play him at third base. He's going against the Toronto Blue Jays. Chris Bassett's on the mound. Chris Bassett was very bad his first start of the year. His velocity has been down in spring training and at the beginning of the season. So he's a little bit more hittable than he would be other times. Probably a guy that's going to be affected by the shift limitations throughout the season as well. Kind of a ground ball pitcher, defense behind him, everything else like that. But when we're looking at Gio Urshela, 4 for 9 versus him in his career, off to a decent start so far. Gives you a little bit of versatility to being able to play shortstop and third base. If we look back at his game logs through the early season, he's got a hit in 3 out of the 5 games, and those 3 games are all multi-hit games, no lower than 9 points. He does have the 2 games where he had 0 hits, but does offer some pretty good upside at a reasonable price tag as well. Then we move down to Jesse Winker, who is our other cheap option today. So he's only $2,700. Looks like a pretty good value overall when you're looking at if he's sitting in that 2 spot for Milwaukee again, going to be very interesting there just off the bat. And then we take into the factor that going against Jack Flaherty today, 6 for 15 versus him in his career with 2 home runs. Jack Flaherty is not the pitcher he used to be. Make no mistakes about that. He had an okay start the first start of the year. He did walk a ton of guys though too, so his control just isn't there at this point in time. It's kind of sad because I was a guy that really liked Jack Flaherty coming up as a prospect early on in his career, but he just hasn't been the same pitcher the last few years. So I do think this is a good spot for Milwaukee to attack. Jesse Winker obviously got great history versus him in the past. He's off to a pretty decent start to the year as well, so we'll bring that up real quick as well. He's got 7 RBIs already too, and let's see, 6 games at this point in time. He's got a hit in 4 out of the 6 games. He's got a multi-hit game in 2 of those games as well. He has been, at least 15 points or more in 3 out of the 6 games as well. So some pretty good upside there at the same time. If he's hitting at the top of that Brewers lineup once again, going against Jack Flaherty, who's a little bit more hittable than he's been in past years. Maybe struggling with some command. Looks like a pretty good play for Jesse Winker today. Obviously, he doesn't have a home run yet this year, but that could very much change versus Flaherty, who he has 2 against in his career. And then last but not least, we're going, obviously one of the best players in all of baseball, Mike Trout, $3,900. That's a reasonable price tag for him. As we're talking, he's off to a decent start to the year as well. He's 7 for 17, with 1 home run versus Chris Bassett in his career. Obviously, there's some familiarity there. Obviously, we already talked about Chris Bassett. Velocity dip at this point in time, he's going to be pretty hittable. He could come out and change all that today, but the signs that we've seen in spring training, the signs we saw in his first start does not imply that. So definitely do like the upside that this Angels lineup has, plus Mike Trout's history versus him in the past. And then even just going into Mike Trout's game log so far this season as well. So we're going down. He's got a hit in all but 1 game, which was the very first game of the season. And when you're looking at everything here, he's got 12 points or more in all but 2 games too. So some pretty good upside there, obviously, with one of the best players in all of baseball. Great matchup just off the bat, and just like the upside that's there in general. So I do like this Angels team quite a bit today. Mike Trout's going to be a big reason why. And then, with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do have listed here, you have $13,000 remaining, just over $3,200 per player. So a lot of different rooms and flexibility to kind of build up your lineup from there. Obviously, with Urshela, you can move him around, whether it's shortstop, third base. If you really want to throw him in utility, you could do that as well. So a lot of different options that are available out there today. There's some pretty good hitter versus pitcher matchups. When you're talking about the Padres, they're going against Jared Schuster, who's making a second career start. So there is some upside there too as well if that game goes off. But kind of getting off of the FanDuel spot at this point in time, we'll go over kind of to my cheat sheet. Just talk about the top stacks for today overall. So let me get that up here real quick. I do have 5 that are listed today, but 2 of those are that game that could have some potential rain. So we don't know if that one's going to go off for sure with the Braves and the Padres. I like both teams to stack in that game. Braves going against Nick Martinez, who a lot of their hitters do have pretty good history versus, whether it is Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Marcelo Zuna, and I believe there's another one too as well. So some pretty good history there versus him as the day moves along, as long as that game does go off. On the Padres side, and going against the young pitcher and Jared Schuster, only went 4 1/3 in his first career start. So if you can get to him, if you can get to that Braves bullpen, might be a good day for this Padres team overall. Obviously, we need to follow up on the weather in that game throughout the day. If I do get any more updates throughout the day, it will be down in the comments, as well as the starting lineups for all these teams on the 6-game main slate as well. And then we move over to the Milwaukee Brewers. They're going against Jack Flaherty. A lot of these guys do have pretty good history versus him, whether it is a Rowdy Tellez, whether it is Jesse Winker, whether it's Christian Yelich, whether it's Willie Adames. Quite a few players there. Then you got some of the younger guys that haven't really faced Jack Flaherty before. If you want to take a shot on one of them, definitely does make some sense today as well. Then we move over to the Los Angeles Angels going against Chris Bassett. Talked a lot at length about him already. Velocity dip hasn't looked good in spring or at the beginning of the year. Going to be pretty hittable today. The Angels look like a pretty good team to stack. There's some guys that do have really good history versus him as well. Gio Urshela, Mike Trout, David Fletcher, if he finds himself in the starting lineup, has some pretty good history versus him as well. Doesn't have quite the upside as some of those other hitters since he's not really much of a home run hitter. But, with the new rules for stolen bases, if he gets in the lineup, gets on base and starts stealing some bases, he could get you some extra points there as well. But we'll just have to see whether or not he ends up in the lineup since he hasn't been playing too much, at least early on in the season. Then obviously you can take shots on Shohei Ohtani. You could take shots on like a Jake Lamb that doesn't really have history with Chris Bassett. You could take a shot on Taylor Ward, excuse me. He's in my cheat sheet as well because he's off to a pretty good start to the year, but he doesn't really have that history versus Chris Bassett at this point in time. And then last but not least, we have the Dodgers going against Madison Bumgarner. Madison Bumgarner, once upon a time, was a really good pitcher. Last year, this year, not too much there at this point. Doesn't look too good at his first start of the season. That Diamondbacks bullpen, it's okay, but it's not like anything special. So if you can get to that bullpen early and kind of attack some of those arms, get some advantageous spots, there's definitely rooms and opportunity to attack there. Will Smith, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, those guys have pretty good history versus Madison Bumgarner in general. So if you want to take a shot on any of them, it does make some sense overall today. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have in terms of the Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today. If you guys have any specific MLB DFS questions, be sure to leave it down in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them throughout the day. As I kind of mentioned in past videos for MLB DFS, primarily just focus on FanDuel for the MLB side. If you guys have questions for DraftKings, you can leave them down in the comments and I'll answer them throughout the day. I won't be doing it during the live stream or anything else like that, but I can definitely take a look at that. Obviously, the scoring is just a little bit different between the two sites. Obviously, you have to play 2 pitchers on DraftKings. So it's just a completely different slate when you're talking about some of that too. Even some of the slates do start at different times and stuff like that, although we haven't had too much of that this year at this point in time. Well, with that being said, that's really what I have for the MLB DFS Core Pick video for today. If you guys do have any more questions, like I said, feel free to ask them down in the comments. I'll be more than happy to help you. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's primarily XFL DFS and MLB DFS. We'll have some USFL DFS starting up really soon as well. Got some NFL draft prospect interviews up on the channel too as well. So if that's something you're into, definitely be sure to check those out as well. Should be having another one go up tomorrow in the morning as well. So definitely be sure to check that one out as well. A lot of different content out there. Probably going to be doing some more NFL draft stuff as we get closer to the actual draft. So if you are a new subscriber, you haven't already subscribed, or you're just subscribing for the first time, make sure you have that notification bell turned on as well, just so you never miss a beat anytime that I do go live or with a pre-recorded video. But with that being said, that's really all I have for today's video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Do definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope that each and every one of you have a good rest of your day and hopefully some success in MLB DFS tonight as well.